Carousel of Life, Day 22, Aged Up. A Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction written based on the Adrinette April 2019 daily prompts. And yes, I sort of cheated on this prompt. If you're new to this story, check the description box for links to the previous chapters, or click on the card in the upper right corner for the playlist. And without further ado, let's take a ride on the Carousel of Life. And the final touch, the mask. Marinette held out the black, shaped vinyl mask she had designed and custom ordered from a manufacturer she had found online. Adrien took it and turned it over in his hands. No straps? He raised an eyebrow, shrugged, and slipped the mask over his eyes. The material was molded and sat comfortably on the bridge of his nose without falling. Pretty cool, huh? There's a special water-based adhesive that we can use for the actual show, Marinette explained, circling Adrien to inspect his face from various angles. The mask looked different from Chat Noir's real one. This one had spiky protrusions on the sides, dulled down and slightly elastic for safety, to suggest whiskers. Despite the differences in the costume, there was something strikingly familiar about Adrien dressed in black leather. You know, you actually look a lot like him. Only because I'm blonde and have green eyes. Adrien waved his hand dismissively. What's the theme again? He meant the theme of the student fashion show coming up in 2 days. Maturity, Marinette answered. I wasn't really sure what to do with it, but I was watching a video on the Ladybug one day and it occurred to me that Ladybug and Chat Noir's suits might need an update when they get older, to look more flattering. Well, mostly Ladybug's. The lines on Chat Noir's suit accentuate all the right areas, so it would probably still look good on him when he gets older, but hers looks a little childish. Almost like one-piece pajamas, so... She trailed off, noticing a faint hue of color that entered Adrien's cheeks. Was it because she'd mentioned Ladybug? Her heart twinged at the thought of Adrien's mind wandering elsewhere, to another girl, and the fact that this other girl was her alter ego didn't make things any better. If Ladybug was the object of Adrien's affections, how would he react if he found out that she was just Marinette? If he was already technically dating her, yet his heart still yearned for something, someone more. Was the real Ladybug actually enough for him? She didn't know what kind of fantasies he had constructed in his mind to fill in the blanks. The thought opened up a pit in Marinette's stomach. Marinette? Adrien's questioning voice drew her out of her thoughts. You okay? Sorry, what was I saying? About the suits. Right, anyway, it inspired me to think about designs that would look better on adults. I guess I took liberties with the theme. It was mostly just an excuse to redesign the suits. Adrien struck a battle-ready pose. They'd be lucky to have suits this cool. This is actually really comfy, he observed, bouncing his knees slightly. The leather hugged his form in a flattering yet not overly revealing way, and polygonal patches of knit fiber sewn in along his outer thighs and calves flexed with his movements. The material isn't as hot as I would have expected. I could actually fight in this. Yeah, those fiber patches have copper woven in. It's supposed to regulate your temperature, absorb sweat, and so on. Pretty awesome. Adrien windmilled his arms, then clenched his fists, rotating his wrists to observe the black vinyl bracers, the same material as the mask, and leather gloves, sporting a neon green paw print design on the back of either hand. He struck another battle pose, flexing his arms and back. It's easy to move in this jacket, too. It was more a vest than a jacket, with a high collar and cropped, angled front that followed the bottom line of his ribcage. The back part elongated into knee-length coattails that split down the center. The belt tail, into which Marinette had sewn a strip of metal that could be posed and positioned like Chat Noir's magic tail, emerged from the slit. Under the vest, Adrien wore a thin, black, faux-leather turtleneck lined with a moisture-wicking material. I like the way the double belt crosses my hips, Adrien remarked, jutting out his hip to admire the 2 overlapping bands of thick leather. Very reminiscent of Squall from Final Fantasy VIII. Ha, you saw right through me, Marinette laughed sheepishly. Should have known you'd notice that right away. Of course, it's my favorite Final Fantasy game. Adrien looked delighted. You played it too? Yeah, it's the only Final Fantasy game I actually played through. The ladybug-related worries that had been gnawing at Marinette scattered under the force of Adrien's megawatt smile. I have a confession. He was my first fictional crush. I loved his character design. Oh, I would be jealous, but I'm pretty positive you like me better than Squall. I'm much more friendly, cuter, and my hair looks better, don't you think? Adrien winked. Combined with the cat pun, the costume, and the affected hubris, he really reminded Marinette of her cocky partner. Don't get too full of yourself, she chided, reaching out to subconsciously scratch the underside of his chin as she often did to Chat Noir. When she realized what she was doing, she stopped abruptly. Sorry, that was weird of me. You were acting a lot like a certain dumb cat. Were her ears playing tricks on her, or had he been purring? Dumb? I thought you were a fan of Chat Noir. He caught her hand with a playful grin. You can do that more if you want. I didn't mind. She humored him with another little scratch, and he closed his eyes, smiling peacefully. No purr. Maybe it was just her imagination. The outfit really did look good on him, from the black leather ears clipped to his hair, to the clunky mid-calf double-buckle boots strapped to his feet, a lucky vintage shop find that Marinette had made slight alterations to. She blushed slightly as she admired the way he effortlessly made her designs look 10 times better than they did on her mannequin. I'm glad everything fits. It more than just fits, it's awesome. You did an amazing job, Marinette. She blushed harder, unable to stop a grin from spreading across her face. Thanks. How long did it take you to make all this? Everything feels so high quality. I can't believe you did all this. A couple months? Months? Adrien gaped at her in disbelief. Marinette wondered what he was so surprised about. 2 months wasn't exactly a tight timeline. What with the play, homework, and Akuma fights, the outfits had been moving forward at what felt like a snail's pace. She got her answer when he continued. Why didn't you tell me you were working on this? Why didn't you ask me sooner about modeling for you? Marinette's heart sank at the disappointment evident in his face and voice. Sorry, I didn't want to impose, she explained dejectedly. You're already so busy. Plus, you're a real industry model, and this is just a silly student project. Marinette, look, I'm not upset with you. Adrien took a step closer to her, grasped her shoulders in his hands, and fixed her with a serious gaze. She found herself getting lost in his eyes, the color of sunlight filtering through tree leaves, unable to look away. It's just, what can I do to make you believe that you're important to me? I wish you'd told me. I feel like you're still keeping me at a distance. I'm sorry, I didn't intend that. Marinette's voice was faint, barely above a whisper. Sure, I may be Adrien Agreste, son of Gabriel Agreste, industry model, face of the Gabriel brand. Adrien recited the lines with a touch of disdain. But frankly, I don't care about any of that. Except my father, of course. My point is, first and foremost, I'm just Adrien, your boyfriend. And before that, your friend. And I want you to let me be part of your life and help you with the things that are important to you. Marinette bit her lip, a little blown away by the intensity of his monologue. It sounded like something he had been holding back for a while. Sorry, she repeated feebly, regretting not sharing more. The next admission came out sounding a little more self-deprecating than she intended. I guess I'm still getting used to the idea that you even care about me. Marinette, Adrien whined, hooking an arm around her neck and drawing her close, gently mussing up her hair with his other hand. How long have we known each other? I cared about you from day one. Why is that so hard to believe? Plus, you're so sweet, adorable, and funny. How could anyone not care about you? He planted a kiss on her head. Get rid of those thoughts. Now. Ensconced in his arms, Marinette blushed at his outburst of silly affection. However, when she peered up at him, she was surprised to discover that he wasn't smiling, and his eyes looked heavy with sadness. It hit her that he really was hurt about it. I'm sorry, Marinette sighed, with more conviction this time. She twisted in his arms and stood on her tiptoes to kiss Adrien's cheeks one by one. I should have told you. I'm sorry for putting distance between us. I'll tell you everything from now on. Releasing Marinette, he squeezed her shoulder, face easing into a half smile. No harm done. Just don't forget that I'm your mannequin. He winked and posed stiffly, arms bent at irregular angles and hands straight as if he were a plastic dummy. Please use me. Marinette giggled, the tension between them dissolving. What a joker. Just fulfilling my duty to make the princess laugh, he said in a gallant tone, flourishing a dramatic bow. Marinette laughed again. It's so funny when you say those things dressed like Chat Noir. You're really good at acting like him. Adrien suddenly stepped close, taking her jaw between two leather-gloved fingers, his face inches from hers, a smoldering expression in his eyes. Why do you assume I'm acting? He purred in a silky tone. How do you know this isn't the real me? Marinette stilled, her mirthful expression draining away. The way he was looking at her, eyes burning behind the black mask, felt so oddly familiar it gave her goosebumps. Just kidding, princess. Adrien grinned and planted a sweet kiss on her cheek before stepping back. Stop that, Marinette insisted with a pout, still feeling the Chat vibes. That is seriously creepy. You're not allowed to be so good at this. And how do you know Chat Noir calls me princess? Adrien's eyes widened in innocent surprise. Oh, he does? Marinette blinked. Yes, isn't that why... I've been calling you princess. He winked. Did that alley cat steal my nickname for you? Ah, right. Marinette refrained from mentioning that Chat had used the nickname far earlier. She laughed weakly. Adrien acting so much like Chat felt disorientingly surreal. Funny coincidence. Yeah. When Adrien's eyes met Marinette's, she was surprised to find that the humor had fallen away, leaving him with an ambiguous expression, a strange mix of curiosity and sadness. What's wrong? Nothing. Adrien shook his head, and the easy grin was back. Anyway, where's my partner? And it was back. The Chat vibe. Unnerving how he could get into character in the blink of an eye. Ladybug, you mean? Marinette mentioned the name cautiously, hyper-aware that they were now talking about Adrien's potential crush. She watched his expressions closely. Who else? Did you finish the outfit yet? He seemed completely casual, but the pink tinge was back on his cheeks. Yeah, I did. Marinette answered distractedly. Julika's modeling, so the measurements are a little tall for me, but I can show you. First, though, could I ask you a question? Go ahead. The girl you said you're in love with. Adrien stiffened. Is it... Ladybug? Marinette forced out, feeling short of breath. All his dramatic cheer vanishing instantaneously, Adrien suddenly seemed very interested in the shape of the paw print on the back of his left hand as he debated what to say. Didn't I say we didn't have to talk or even think about her? He asked, very quietly. So, is that a yes? Marinette pressed, gently yet insistently. He was silent for a moment. The next words out of his mouth weren't an answer, but the answer was implied. I know. I probably seem like I have my head in the clouds over a silly celebrity crush. He backtracked. Had. I'm getting over her. I am over her. Anyway, he sighed. It's hard to explain. He looked frustrated, as if having some sort of internal conflict. Marinette took his leather-gloved hands in hers. It's okay. You don't have to explain if you don't want to. I was just curious. I don't think it's silly. Really? Some of the tension left Adrien's face, and he met her eyes searchingly. Of course, how could I judge you for liking someone? Marinette smiled wanly. It wasn't his fault. How could he know? Yet the voice in her mind nagged. The girl you say you love is right in front of you. I'm right here. Why do you sigh? Why do you look so sad? Am I not enough after all? The thought made Marinette feel weak. Thanks, Marinette. Adrien said it reverently, pulling Marinette to his chest to embrace her tenderly. Burying into his shoulder, Marinette let her smile drop, twining her arms around his waist. What do you like about her? She asked, bracing herself against his heartbeat. Marinette. Detachedly, Marinette observed that his voice sounded different with her ear pressed into the crook between his shoulder and his neck. I feel like you're becoming even more obsessed with her than I am. Was. Adrien warned. Marinette let out a dissatisfied sigh. Adrien seemed to pick up on her mood. You're the one who brought her up. His tone was tense, as if he were beginning to get frustrated. Marinette was afraid to check his expression. I wasn't even thinking about her. I'm here with you. What's gotten you so upset? Sorry, Marinette muttered. She was doing a lot of apologizing tonight, and sorry was starting to sound hollow. She knew she was probably making things worse, but she decided to press on the bruise a little more. Adrien, what if... Marinette gulped, deciding to take a risk. Maybe it was stupid and reckless, but she was feeling emotional, and she felt confident she could back her way out of him suspecting anything. What if I were Ladybug? Adrien released her suddenly and held her at arm's length. What? He asked dumbly. What if I were Ladybug? Would I... Marinette bit her lip and averted her eyes, almost embarrassed to be asking. Would I be enough for you? What do you mean? Why would you ask that? Adrien looked perplexed. Marinette stood silent for a moment, trying to think of how to explain her question without giving herself away. Heat radiated through Adrien's gloves and the thin fabric of her sleeves. He didn't move, patiently waiting for her answer. Maybe you're feeling like you're missing out on something by giving up on her? Marinette spoke slowly and tentatively, testing the waters. I mean, I'm sure you've imagined all sorts of things about her since we don't know much about her. Let's just say, hypothetically, if I turned out to be Ladybug, would you regret that somehow? Would someone like me not be enough to be Ladybug? Adrien's brow was furrowed, as if he were trying to wrap his mind around why Marinette was asking these things. Marinette realized she probably just sounded insecure. She was frustrated with how the words sounded as they spilled out of her mouth. Finally lifting her eyes to Adrien's, she blurted out, I mean, I'm right here in front of you, yet you still seem sad about Ladybug. But what do you actually know about her? Maybe you're yearning for something more that just doesn't exist. Adrien looked at her incredulously. Why are you talking as if you are Ladybug? It's just hypothetical, Marinette stressed, avoiding having to outright lie that she wasn't Ladybug. Ladybug could be a normal girl just like me. Maybe you've invented a fantasy version of her that's way better than any real girl. I feel like we need to talk about this, that's all. Otherwise... She couldn't quite finish the thought. What she wanted to express was, if the time ever came for her to tell Adrien that she was Ladybug, would his ideal be shattered? Despite all his assurances, would he end up disappointed by the mere fact that the alluringly mysterious figure he longed to know was just the same girl he already knew? Adrien let out a sigh and pursed his lips, regarding her for a moment before removing the mask from his face, taking off the gloves and setting them on Marinette's desk. He took her hand and led her over to the chaiselong. Sitting with one leg hooked under him, he pulled her down to sit beside him, turned so they were face to face. Marinette. He was utterly serious. First of all, I'm really sorry if you feel like I'm not happy with you. He was still holding one of her hands, gazing at her softly and sincerely. Because that isn't true. I am happy. Now, I know it's hard for you to understand my feelings for Ladybug, and I don't expect you to, but the last thing I want is for you to feel overshadowed. Marinette watched his eyes roam her face, feeling at his mercy. What he was saying now sounded like a preamble, and she didn't know where it was heading. Part of her hoped he would answer her initial question with the assurance that of course she would be enough. Part of her masochistically hoped he would show signs of hesitation and dissatisfaction, revealing that he didn't think Marinette could be Ladybug. That he would have expected more from Ladybug. Because if he felt that way, she wanted to know. His expression was unreadable. It felt like they were having a fight. She regretted saying anything. Things had been light-hearted before. Why had she ruined everything by opening her mouth? Her eyes dropped to her lap where her fingers twisted, picking at the seam of her skirt. Adrien caught hold of one of her hands and cupped it in both of his, warm and dry. Marinette looked up, surprised to find his eyes half-lidded and soft, his lips stretched in a calm, lopsided smile. "I'll admit something to you." He squeezed her hand. "What?" She blinked in unguarded curiosity. "I wished you were her. Or, I should say, I wished she was you." He said it as if divulging one of his deepest secrets. Marinette's mouth opened in an O of astonishment. "What? Why?" "I've always admired you, Marinette. You've always been special to me, even before I started falling for you. I knew I wanted to make friends with you, the moment I saw you. Nino must have noticed because he's the one who encouraged me to go and talk to you after that gum incident. If he hadn't, I probably wouldn't have had the courage. I was convinced that you hated me." "I'm sorry for judging you so quickly," Marinette murmured, ashamed of her rashness. "Don't sweat it. It's in the past, and I understand." Adrien smiled, chasing away her worries. "Anyway, it was a pretty huge thing for me to actually put myself out there and proactively try to be your friend. Would you believe I'd never done that before? Ever in my whole life? I mean, I've known Chloe ever since I can remember, and Nino kind of latched onto me on his own. But you were the first friend I wanted to make. It used to make me sad that we weren't closer, and I worried a lot about what you thought of me." He lifted her hand, tracing her slender fingers slowly. "You're just such an awesome, beautiful person. And I thought it would be so perfect if she turned out to be you." Marinette didn't know what to say. Her heart was beating fast, and her hand tingled where Adrien's fingertips touched. He continued. "So, to answer your question, you're more than enough. If you happen to also be Ladybug, that would be a cool bonus. But I love you, Marinette. I'm not longing for anyone or anything more, not even Ladybug." He sighed. "I really wish you would stop worrying about her." Marinette's brain was stuck on what he had said 4 sentences ago. "Wait, you... what?" "What? Do you really?" "Do I really... what?" Marinette blushed, not wanting to seem presumptuous by repeating the words, in case she had misheard or misunderstood. Adrien blinked at her, perplexed, then burst out laughing when he realized what she was talking about. "Oh, princess. Come here." He tugged her hand, making her collapse against him, and pulled her onto his lap, nuzzling his cheek against her hair. "I love you. I do. How many times do I have to tell you that you make me happy? Stop worrying." He brushed back her hair and bent over to lay a gentle kiss on her temple. Marinette curled into his chest. His laugh sounded like a rumble with her ear pressed against his ribs. "I love you too," she murmured, feeling dazed and a little like she was drowning in him. He pulled her up so their faces were almost level, reclined side by side on the chaiselong. She lay her head against his shoulder, in the dip between his collarbone and his neck, and he leaned his head against hers. "Do you feel better now?" Marinette nodded. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to be so insecure. The thought was just bugging me. Adrien snorted at the half-intentional pun and stroked his fingers through her hair. It's okay. Did you mean it when you said you wished Ladybug was me? Adrien chuckled to himself. Yes, I did. You don't know... He stopped himself mid-sentence, and Marinette felt the brush of his hair as he shook his head. Anyway, it doesn't matter anymore. I don't care if you are or not. I love you, he repeated. Marinette answered by pressing a chaste kiss against the base of his neck, the only exposed skin she could reach from her current position. She was silent a few moments, simply enjoying Adrien's embrace, before asking, Why Ladybug, if you don't mind my asking? Adrien hummed in thought. That's a complicated story, Princess. I might have to save it for another day. His gentle tone, soft as rustling paper, made his words easy to accept. Okay, Marinette replied, her eyes sliding shut. Adrien's fingers combed through her hair again, slowly. There was nowhere she'd rather be than here. I'm still wearing the outfit, Princess. It's going to wrinkle, Adrien warned as she had started to doze off. That's okay, she murmured. 5 more minutes. As you wish. His fingers stroked again. That night, with everything squared away for the show and her homework done, Marinette went through her bedtime routine, changed into pajamas, and collapsed on her bed with a gleeful thwomp. Isn't Adrien the sweetest? She squealed, hugging her cat pillow. He did say some really sweet things to you, Marinette, Tiki chirped, hovering above her. I'm so happy for you. Marinette stopped rolling around to stare at the ceiling, a small pout forming on her lips. The only thing is, I'm completely confused about how he ended up with a crush on Ladybug in the first place. I mean, he said he loved her, and he said it was a complicated story. She turned on her side to face Tiki. Don't you think I would know something about it? I mean, I've barely seen him as Ladybug. You'll have to wait until he's ready to tell you, Marinette, Tiki advised. Marinette sat up. Wait! Tiki watched as her charge clambered down the ladder to fetch a once crumpled paper, now smoothed and folded neatly, from one of the small drawers of her desk. Her bedside lantern was on, providing enough light to find her way around the room, but now she switched on her desk lamp to get a better look at the sheet of paper. It was Adrien's love poem. Slumping into her desk chair, she pored over the poem, scanning the words for the 100th time. Every day we see each other? Tiki! What is it, Marinette? Tiki, he wrote, every day we see each other. I think I can count on one hand the number of times Ladybug and Adrien have met in person. Maybe he meant on television? Maybe. Marinette bit her lip. She didn't think that was it, but she couldn't rule out the possibility. Or maybe he meant... Marinette stared at the poem, reading the line over and over. No way! What are you thinking, Marinette? Marinette was afraid to say it out loud. She shook her head. No, you're probably right. He must have meant on television. She folded the poem and put it away before switching off the desk light and stumbling back up to her bed in a daze. Sometimes she had crazy ideas at night. It was better to sleep on it. Good night, Tiki, she mumbled, burying her face in the cat pillow, filling her mind with happy memories of Adrien, trying not to get carried away with associated thoughts. Good night, Marinette. Thank you for listening to Chapter 22 of Carousel of Life. If you enjoyed it, consider supporting my channel by giving this video a thumbs up, or leave a comment below to let me know what you thought. Until next time!